Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Christopher Salute. You are with WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio. We are talking about closure and relationships today. Super excited to talk to you about that. I have to be honest, I was chatting with my boy twice. A couple minutes ago, he said he was running late. I don't know if he's showing up tonight. I don't know if, I left the office door open. We'll see if he comes in. It's not like him to not be here. I hope he comes. I put cologne on when I'm going to see this guy. I don't put the best cologne on, like not the cologne like where I'm going to see my girl that night, but I put some cologne on for him, and I made my hair nice, so make sure I hang out with him. But you get all that, flavor. I'm going to kind of miss his energy. That kind of like, if you're thinking about it twice, then it better be nice, or whatever he says. I was trying to do something like that, where it's like if you call him the doctor, you better know what doctor you. I don't know. I don't have the spice that he's got. So today we're going to talk about closure in relationships, and I have to be honest. I am bored as heck with all this COVID, coronavirus stuff, with everything going on. I'm rewatching Sopranos. So my father and I have a great relationship. We probably talk, we used to talk probably every third or fourth day. We're talking every day, and we're literally going, here, I got like my phone, like, yeah, no, what's going on with you? Yeah, no, nothing. Yeah, no, same. But seriously, what's going on though? Same. Nothing? Cool. And it's literally just, it's the same stuff, right? And so, it's terrible. So I'm getting back to my roots. I'm watching a little bit of Sopranos. I bought I know Cece, I was asking you the other day. Cece's, of course, in the background, making sure this whole thing spins properly and produces the whole show. I was asking Cece the other day, I was like, hey, do you know how to fix watch it? Like, how do you put batteries? I bought a battery watch repair set. I'm going to take the links out of all my watches that are loose. I'm going to put batteries in it. I'm going to have a blast. So I've been really, really just bored, just doing all sorts of stuff. Boredom can take so many different avenues and take so many different ways about. It can come to fruition and come to the surface in so many different ways. One thing that I've noticed is people are texting their exes quite a bit over the past X amount of months, weeks, whatever. They're texting their exes. They are trying to reopen maybe the wounds or the relationships or whatever. This is I would say probably no different for me than any other time in my life, where typically I'll at least once to twice a month. If you've dated as many times as I've dated, I was a serial monogamous for quite some time. At least once to twice a month, I can expect a weird someone popping up, someone liking a photo that hasn't followed me in years, someone messaging me. I'll even get, the funny thing is too, when we talk, Cece, about my special human, my special human is an amazing, amazing person. She absolutely is an amazing person. And I would say one thing about her, we all have our flaws. I think that she and I both we suffer from extreme jealousy. And I can't even tell her who's texting me. She's like, who's messaging you? Who's saying what's up? Who's trying to get back in touch? I don't even know who they are, because it's so far removed from my past that I don't even have their phone number saved in my, my thing, in my queue anymore. Like, I don't even have them saved. And look, I'm no stranger to the who's this, new number, who's this text. I've done that when I know who it is. But I literally have to go. Valentina says, boredom is hard. You sleep, you eat, you call old friend, which is good, but we'll also think about past and present and future a lot. Yes, Tina, and I want to talk about phone calls on this chat for sure. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with phone calls. I want to jot that down. Valentina Janik, by the way, is one of my dear, dear friends. She's amazing. She actually wrote a book, From Fire to Freedom. Really, really amazing human being. I want to talk about phone calls in a second. For sure. So we're getting onto these things where I'm going to make sure I'm hosting a watch party here so I can get people watch party. Yeah, people will come on here. We have actually a good group. So, people are texting their exes. They're texting people and they're trying to get a hold of them. They're trying to maybe reopen, things going on. It's just crazy. And so I want to talk about closure and how, you know, what your partner or ex-partner deserves from you with regard to a relationship, right? Because it's super important to understand, you know, the closure in a relationship, how that filters out into certain things. A couple of people were like, "Oh my God, you need to educate me. How does it work? How does closure work?" Well, first of all, I want to start this conversation by saying, if somebody has hurt you in a relationship, you owe them nothing. You literally do not owe anybody a conversation. And that goes from anybody, from a friend to a colleague to a roommate to a best friend to a boyfriend or girlfriend, romantic partner, spouse, mother, father, grandparent, and uncle, cousin, brother. It doesn't matter. If you've been hurt to the point where it makes you uncomfortable to speak to somebody via text, via email, via in person, you do not owe them their closure, right? It is not the closure that they don't deserve that closure from you. It's on them to healthily cope with what has gone on with the ending of your relationship. However, there are certain times when closure could be valuable, right? If your relationship was toxic, right? You probably don't need closure. You probably need to make sure that you both understand that you're bad for each other, right? I remember specifically, you go through pictures and you go through things and I went through last summer, I was like burning photos. It's, by the way, when you burn photos, it smells terrible. And I remember going through a photo, and if anybody knows about my past and about my history, they know that I dated some high profile people, and I specifically dated somebody that I was just enamored with for a long time before I even met them. They were just what I thought was a beautiful person physically. Come to find, internally not as beautiful of a person as I thought, but that's okay. Things happen. And I remember specifically, um, so I'll get real with you guys for a second because there were some points in my life where I had to get over that specific person, the hurt that I felt. I was downing, you know, whiskey, um, 1 to 2 melatonin, um, and some NyQuil to get some sleep, and blasting my thunderstorm sounds, my rain sounds, like to the loudest possible thing to drown out the negative thoughts that were in my brain. So I remember specifically, she called me. She called me out of nowhere, and I answer the phone, right? Answer the phone, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, and I can't even because of course I want to talk to this person, right? Because I am still infatuated with them, right? I wouldn't call it love; I'd call it infatuation. Um, and she's like, "What are you drunk? Like, are you first?" Actually, she goes, "What are you lit?" And I had no idea. I didn't even know what lit meant. Like, I still don't even think I understand what lit means. And this was like the word lit was like brand new to our vocabulary. And I was like, I don't even know what. And she's like, you lit? You going out drinking? You going out and you're partying? You meeting girls? And like, what do you do? It was like a Thursday night. I literally was downing melatonin and whiskey to fall asleep because of the hurt that I felt from this person. And she's like accusing me of going out and partying and drinking and meeting women. And what she was looking for, right? What she was looking for was closure. What she was looking for was the reasonable understanding that she was right to have not be in that relationship anymore, right? Or the reopening of that kind of relationship to see if maybe there's something there or to close it in a way that's less hurtful, right? When you're looking for closure, when you're reopening a conversation to figure out what kind of closure you can have, you're typically trying to rewrite the story, right? You're trying to rewrite the story. Here's where there's a pitfall, right? The pitfall is the story happened the way it happened. Whoever was hurt was hurt. Whoever said what they said what they said. The perception could potentially change, but it doesn't change what actually happened. It doesn't change the actual story that happened. And so it's super important that we think about that as we think about closure in a relationship. I thought I'd go through some conversations, some examples of things that have happened in my life. And so I'm sitting here enjoying my water. I'm going to talk about body positivity over the course of the next few weeks, but I'm also enjoying a milkshake. I started cleansing, and this is the first time in like months that I've been able to have a milkshake, and it's like one of my like low carb amazing shakes. So this is just a great time to like sit back, relax, enjoy, and kind of reflect on closure and what it means to us and what it means for us and what it means to our current and to our future relationships. Like, do we need closure to continue on with new potential relationships? As always, if you're watching in, I suggest and I want you to chime in and give us some feedback, ask some questions. We're here to talk about it. I want to just touch on phone calls before I let you go, Valentina. Valentina says, we're eating, we're sleeping, we're on the phone. I was on the phone today for like 35 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, and it was like 43 minutes longer than I want to be on the phone. I'm so done with the phone. If anybody knows me, my own special human knows, I hate the phone. I hate it with a passion. I don't like the phone. I don't like FaceTiming. I'll be honest, I FaceTime with her because she's hot. And when I see her, I'm like, all right, fine, FaceTime a little bit. And then FaceTime turns into, Um, but, I hate the phone because you can't do anything else when you're on the phone, right? You can text and you can answer other people and you can be on your computer and you can be watching a movie, you can play video game. When you're on the phone, it's like you're just stuck with that person. I told you, I'm on the phone with my dad going, literally, yeah, yeah, no, I'm not really doing anything. What are you doing? Yeah. You ate dinner? You watching, what are you watching? Law and Order? Cool. Yeah. And it's literally the same conversation. And I love my dad, same conversation. So I'm glad that you're on the phone, Valentina. But phone calls for me are just treacherous, and they make me so anxious, and I just want to get off the phone. And like I said, 45 minutes today was 43 minutes too long, and of course now my special human is going to get mad at me. I will call her tonight, and I will tell her that I love being on the phone with her specifically. She's an amazing person. But back to closure and back to how, communication in general. We can talk about phone calls in general, how it relates to closure. But the first thing that I want to tell folks is that you don't owe anybody closure. And I want to, so the first example we kind of ran through was my ex, who was, a bit, like I said, she was a dramatic person. She was somebody who historically was, somebody that I really wanted. And so I couldn't wait to answer that phone. And her answer to that was being dramatic. And that was the last conversation we ever had. I don't know what it did for her. For me, it solidified the fact that no matter what I said or did, I was going to be misperceived. And I promise you that night I was not going out drinking. I literally had whiskey, melatonin, sleep. So I think what that phone call did for me was it solidified what what I was missing out on, and what I was missing out on was a misperception, right? Another example that I wanted to bring up was closure from somebody who, we had kind of a tumultuous thing, and there was some hurt there, and they had said some things that I didn't want repeated, and sent them to the wrong people, and just kind of made a whole big mess. If anybody knows me, they know that I've been kind of a controversial character in certain communities, and they have texted me, and what they did was super hurtful and super disloyal and dishonest, and broke a lot of codes of ethics that I personally adhere to. I may not be the most perfect person, and I may not. I'll say it. I haven't always been monogamous. I've been ethically non-monogamous, and sometimes not. I've always told the truth. And if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And so this person didn't do the thing that they said they were going to do. There was some secrets told, and they really appreciate it. So literally, it's been probably a year or so since I spoke to that person. And periodically, every 3 to 6 months, I'll get some messages or phone calls talking about phone calls, Valentina, which I hate, from this person. And sometimes, when that person's looking for closure, the best thing that you can do is just not answer the phone, and just not just not my man. Well, thank you very much, CG. How are you? Um, um, so sometimes the best thing that you can do is just literally just not answer them. You know, um, so this person, they said things like, um, "Thinking about you. Hope you're well. Why won't you answer the phone?" And then last message I got was a few months ago that said like, was just talking about you. I hope everything's great. Said really good things about you, things like that. And I didn't answer. And as tempted as you are to answer that person that you know it's been over for a while with, sometimes the answer is to not answer the person. And I say that because when you don't answer that person, you're avoiding um, you're avoiding a confrontation, or you're avoiding a a conversation that may not be real, right? It may not even be a real because you're not going to ever be able to get into the feelings that you actually felt in so long. And they have certain perceptions about you, you have certain perceptions about them. There's certain times in which you just may want to drop it, right? Um, so, it's there are certain times where, the closure in the relationship might be a conversation gone bad, and there are certain times where closure in the relationship might be the conversation doesn't need to happen, right? It just doesn't need to happen because, there's nothing to be learned or gained from that particular conversation, right? So those are two, particular kind of examples that I have. The next one that I would go through, and feel free if you guys have some examples too. I think Twice just got back to me. He said he's unfortunately not going to be able to make it. He's had a deep conversation with his father tonight, and it went a little bit long. Um, But the third example I would go through is um, the type of closure conversation where you do say all the things that you want to say, right? So I remember specifically, I was talking to somebody who I mean, probably one of the quickest kind of fall in love, but not really because it wasn't love, but the quickest like fall in like that I had had, and probably you know one of the in my whole life. And it was a really intense relationship, but it was built on a lot of things that just weren't. They just weren't. They weren't sustainable. They just weren't sustainable because we both had a lot of issues that we needed to work on ourselves. And I remember when it started to kind of go away. Like I said, I was ethically non-monogamous, so I started to talk to somebody else, and I'm sure they started to talk to somebody else, and we're still trying to maybe talk to each other. And I could still remember the conversation. I was at my place in New York, just outside of the city, and I remember I was in my bathroom talking to them and telling them all the things that they didn't have that my new person that I was talking to had. And maybe it was right, maybe it wasn't. I like to think it was, I was correct. But I literally said to a T every single thing that I wanted to say. Um, that's the kind of closure that I think most people want, right? It's the kind of closure that you hope for. And I have to be honest. At the end of that conversation, I don't know that it made me feel any better. I don't know that it made me feel any better to put somebody in their place that the way that I did, and I certainly don't think it painted me in a good way or in a good light, because I think that you probably could get closure in a much better way where both parties feel okay about the ending of a relationship. Um, I remember hanging up the phone and going. I just remember going like I hung up the phone and I went, that was good, you know? And that only lasted a few minutes. It only lasted a couple of minutes because um, I thought to myself, did I really need to say those things? Were those the types of things that I needed to get out? And also, there was pushback on the other end, right? So that person said some things to me that were potentially harmful or hurtful, that to get off their chest. And I thought to myself, the feeling that I felt there where they were saying those things, I wonder um, if that's how they felt the entire phone conversation. I wonder how many other times that I made that person feel that way. um, so you also want to remember, closure may be good for you, closure may be good for that person that's trying to get closure to you, but both parties are going to need to want closure in a relationship when a relationship ends. With that note, we're on the 20-minute mark. I want to talk about healthy closure at in the last 15 to 20 minutes of our talk tonight. This is WGSN-DB Going Solo Radio. You're with Dr. Christopher Salute at the barbershop. Cece's our producer in the back. What I am going to do, if you are new to our show, I am going to take a short, literally 10 to 15 second break of silence where you can actually just, you'll observe silence. The reason we do that is because when this show gets picked up by our radio stations down, I think in Florida, is it Orlando? Um, they're able to insert their advertisements there. So we need to just take 15 to 20 seconds to do that now, and it's just going to be awkward, and I'll do some hand puppets if you want, but that's all I got for you. So we'll be back. WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Salute, CEO of Bolt Holdings out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and you listen to The Barbershop. Okay, and we're back. Hope you guys enjoyed that break as much as I did. Got my little milkshake, got my water. Cece, you'll have to let me know at some point if I'm allowed. Like, do I have to put my water in like an unmarked bottle? Like, I want Body Armor Sports Water to sponsor us with an alkaline pH balance of 9+ for sure. But if they're not sponsoring us, I wonder if we're allowed to show their label. I'll have to call Body Armor Water and say we millions of people who are watching our show, just millions. I sound like Trump. Like, it's huge. It's the best. It's the best barbershop show in all of the land. Probably the best radio show ever in existence. But I want the people that I'm drinking to come and sponsor our show. So welcome back to WGSN-DB, Going Solo Radio. This is Christopher Salute with The Barbershop. We are talking about closure in relationships. If you're just joining us after the break, or if you just, if you took a break, I went through the first 20 minutes and kind of talked about closures of my own personal past, and you're welcome to, of course, chime in. Talked about closure that maybe I need a bold cup. I do. If that's CC, I do have some bold cups, and I should probably put them in some bold cups. I've got a beautiful purple bold coffee dispenser. I've got some bold mugs. I've got some bold bottles. So yeah, I should do that. I should definitely do that. We actually have a bold swag shop that I'll order you some stuff from CC for sure. Especially, now that we got our stimulus checks, why not waste it on promotional items? So we spent the first 20 minutes of our show talking about just kind of some bad breakups and closure. And if you only listen to the first 20 minutes, you're gonna what you've learned about me is a lot of my breakups end badly, and and the closure conversations don't go as well as they should. That's not my entire life. So let's talk about good, positive relationships, positive closure that can actually enhance and not just enhance the relationship going forward, but enhance your perception of the relationship and give you some perspective on reality. And I'm going to disclose something that I don't normally talk about. I will talk about my marriage. Not too many people know this about me. I am 35 years old. I was married at a pretty young age to my college sweetheart, who I loved dearly. She is still an amazing human being. I wish that we were still in touch. I wish we still had a good relationship. Unfortunately, one of the exes that I mentioned previously had a really strong hold on me and told me that I needed to unfriend her on Facebook and delete all of our wedding photos and all these other things. And I obliged because I was just infatuated with this human, and it is what it is, right? Sometimes you do things for infatuation more so than you'd even do for love, because when you're in love, you tend to make better decisions. Let me say this. You make decisions that are everlasting and sustainable, because when you're in love, you want that love to last. You don't want to be in a situation where you've made a decision that's foolhardy and you've got to rectify it later. When you are infatuated with someone, you'll do pretty much anything you have to kind of keep that person. And unfortunately, my ex-wife and I have fallen out for that reason. I think probably some others. I think probably because I'm so open about my relationships, I think it probably made her uncomfortable. But I'm going to share just a very brief and not intimate story. So I've learned not to share intimate details. But when my ex-wife and I started the process of splitting up, one of the things that was super valuable for both of us was closure. And I remember when it happened. I remember it specifically, and I won't give you all the details of the conversation, but there was an unsettling moment one night, about 2, 3 in the morning, and if 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 you've ever if you've ever been in my presence, like my boys, hang out with me in hotels, stuff like that, like I fall asleep like a rock. I mean, I sleep like a baby. I'm exhausted and I sleep like crazy. Unless I've got like a financial issue where I'm anxious about it, or I've got to make payroll or something like that, and things are in my way. Typically sleep like a baby, and this night I couldn't sleep. I just couldn't sleep, and I realized why, and it was because my partner, my wife, wasn't sleeping, and we wound up having a conversation. I said, "Why can't you sleep?" And I'll spare the details of the conversation, but she basically said, "I don't want to be married to you anymore. I don't want to be your wife." And I remembered a couple of feelings at that time that she said this to me. I remembered feeling one, really and truly pain, uh, true pain, because this person um, was so near and dear to my heart. We shared so many amazing memories at such a deep, deep level, and we really, really did get along on a lot of different levels. I think that there were some fundamental things that we didn't agree on, and I think that we were young, and I think maybe if we'd met a little bit older, they might have been okay, or we might have been more um, firm in our ways to the point where we would have said, "Yikes, probably not a good pairing," right? But I remember feeling genuine pain, just pain because I knew that if she was saying it, it was truly over. To that point, I could have been the one who said we will be together or we will not. I was in control or in charge of whether we were going to be together or not. So when she's saying it, to me, that's it's over, right? So that was the first thing I felt was true pain. Now the second thing that I felt was relief. I felt relief because um, I remember thinking to myself, I don't need to make this decision anymore. This is not a decision that I need to make. This is now in her hands. I submit to her, and she has decided that this relationship can go no further. And I think it was the right thing. The third thing I felt was kind of like, and she felt it too. We started just we were laughing. We just started laughing, and we started laughing because I think all of the tension, all the pressure, like a piece of coal that hadn't become a diamond yet, right? Like we're waiting for this thing to become a diamond. We're trying so hard to turn this thing into a diamond. We're trying so hard to become a diamond, and it finally cracks. And when it cracks, it's like I don't know, like Play-Doh. Like it just wasn't what we it was cracked up to be. It wasn't what we thought it was going to be, and we just start laughing. And we just start laughing and laughing and laughing. And I said to her, and we had multiple conversations throughout. It took her about I think 60 or 90 days before she moved. She moved up to the Northeast, and she got a great job up there. And we talked about it, and it was really great. It was an amazing experience for her, and I hope she's doing really well up there. And I'm sure that she is. I've heard that she's got a new partner, and I think that she's doing great things. But we talked throughout the next couple of months, and I remember a couple of things. I remember closure. um, I remember it feeling like it should be over, and I remember feeling like I was heard, and I remember feeling like I was hearing what she was saying. So she said a couple of things that stuck to me. I had gone on multiple business trips throughout the last couple of months of our marriage. Well, our marriage lasted a little bit longer because of you know, it takes a while to get divorced in New York, but the last couple of months of our marriage that we had observed, and um, I remember, I mean, China, Hawaii, lots of other places, and I didn't call her on any of them. I texted her, I emailed her, um, especially in China because the Wi-Fi is pretty tough to get onto. I never give her a phone call, and she said to me, "I'm your wife. You didn't even bother to call me." And I remember thinking to myself, that's a pretty clear indication that something's wrong. It's a pretty clear indication that this person has a valid entree into this divorce. She is firmly making the right decision. You did not call her on a business trip, on multiple business trips. And it's my head was in other places that, lots of other reasons, but that was, something just something that was there. There were some other points in the relationship where, I would go into her and I would cry to her and I would tell her I wanted her and I would tell her that I loved her. I'd tell her to come back, and she would repeat the words to me that I had repeated to her in our life, in our marriage. And she said to me, You said you would do this. You said you would come back. You said that you'd beg for me. And you said, under no uncertain circumstances do I ever take you back because you're going to do this over and over again. And she repeated my exact words to me. And that was a closure that I needed to hear. That was something that I needed to understand from her mouth that said to me, Christopher, this is a relationship that should not be. You've told her it's a relationship that should not be. You need to let this go. And so that was the beginning of me truly, truly letting it go. Um, and I think that we had a bond during our marriage that is something that a lot of people wish for. And I think that if we had worked on it, we probably could have gotten a lot further than we did, or somewhere down the road, maybe it wouldn't have worked, whatever. I mean, I've really only been monogamous for 2 to 3 people, and I don't think I could have done that with her just because I had something to prove at that point in my young age. Um, but that was definitely one relationship that I thought I had some really, 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 really good closure for. Um, Another one that comes to mind is the closure that I felt with a very similar kind of ex. We had lived together, probably would have considered marriage as well. Um, we were living in a beautiful home out on Long Island, and it was a very kind of just similar conversation where I just came home one day and I said, "Look, I put a deposit down on an apartment. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to move out. And I know that we've been working on this for some time, and there's just certain things that aren't there for me, and there's certain things that I think need to be there for you, and we're just not doing this the right way." And at that point, this is super important for everyone to understand when you're seeking closure or helping someone seek closure. At that point, I shut my mouth and I let her speak. And what she said was what I would expect to hear. She basically said, "Seems like you've made a decision. You've done something pretty dramatic and pretty final." Um, and the reason that I did that, and I explained to her, was that on Long Island, when you're looking for an apartment or looking for a house, you have like a window of like 4 days before somebody else with more money buys it. I mean, Long Island, people think that there's like these pockets of wealth throughout the country. I don't know that you truly understand pockets of wealth until you go to Long Island, because it's just wealth upon wealth. It's old money, kids who have their parents who have their parents' money, money. And so when you want to put a deposit down on a rental, you're competing with like a college kid who's got his parents' credit card. You're dealing with trust funds. You're dealing with people who can't afford a house yet but make $200,000 a year. You're dealing with a lot. So if you see an apartment, you got to go on it. So the last thing I wanted to do was tell my partner that I didn't want to be with her anymore, and then be in kind of an awkward situation for the next couple of weeks trying to find an apartment, right? I found an apartment and I said, "This is what I did." And I did say during this conversation, I said, if if through conversations over the next couple of weeks, because it was like a month or 6 weeks out that I was moving, if throughout the next couple of weeks we can find some sort of middle ground where we can grow together, then I'll happily lose the deposit, because the money is not nearly as important as if we can make this work, right? So I did kind of give myself the out there and give myself the in back in there. And she said, "Okay, well, let's talk about it." And this was a really healthy way to kind of close out the relationship, because throughout the course of the next couple of weeks, we knew a couple of things. We knew it didn't have to stay that way. I was leaving, right? So we could be out, right? Number two, if we truly wanted it to happen and we truly wanted to make it work, all we were losing was a deposit on all I was losing was a deposit on an apartment, right? It really wasn't that big of a deal, because the deposit on an apartment is not that big. If you truly love someone and you're going to spend the rest of your life with them, you lose the deposit on an apartment, right? And I've done that even with my current partner. I basically said to her, you know, "I love you. These are the things I'm willing to give up, right? There are certain things I'm not willing to give up, right? But these are the things I'm willing to give up. And if you tell me that they have to go, they have to go." So putting it on the table and saying, "Look, I'm willing to sacrifice certain things for you," I think is super important. But over the course of the next couple of weeks, we wound up having some conversations. And throughout the course of the conversations, what we found was, I think that I hadn't been as truthful and as forthcoming with my feelings and with my level of intimacy, and I don't mean physical. I mean, I hadn't been as logically and emotionally intimate with her as I should have been. And a lot of that came to fruition as we realized that she was, I think, putting in a little bit more into the relationship than I was. And so it became abundantly clear, I think, that I at least needed to move out. Now, I think we had a couple of visits after that, and she came by and we talked and we chatted. And it became more and more clear as things started to spread apart that it just wasn't going to work for us. So those are two, I thought, two good solid examples of what closure what real closure looks like. And I've had other examples too. I mean, people that I've dated in college and afterwards, where you could write a letter. People. I had a friend who used to call me like the king of the closure email. I would write a closure email to almost everybody that I'd ever dated, and it wound up not being a closure email. It wound up being an email that reopened the conversation, because when you're emailing, you have the opportunity to get out a lot of thoughts, a lot of things at one time that can be countered because you're not there to speak to it, to cut off the conversation, to do whatever, which is what typically happens when you're, in a heated kind of confrontation, right? You're cutting people off, you're way to speak, your fists are balling up, right? When you're emailing, it's there's the potential to be more civil, but also the potential to be way more hostile and way more uh, verbose and detailed in your response. So the closure email is something that I tend to write quite a bit. I've also had closure, years and years after a relationship. I can think of one person specific who I'm still pretty good friends with. In fact, I should check in with her at some point. She's just a sweet human, and we didn't really date. We just kind of hung out a couple times in college, and I remember we kind of had I had visited her down. I was down on a business trip, and we had some dinner, and we just kind of talked about it. And she was like, when you said this, it really struck me and it hurt me, and blah blah blah. And I said, look, this is where I was coming from, and this is who I thought you were. And she said, well, yeah, I kind of was that person, but I'm not that person now. And so it really was hard for me to kind of um, go through the dichotomy of who I am now versus who I was then and what you had said. And I said, well, I wasn't saying what I said to you. I was saying what I said to her. And I certainly don't think that, I think we kind of ended in like a heated, oh, well, I'm gone. And certainly not the right way to close out a conversation. But I said, had I met this person here, I wouldn't have reacted in the way that I reacted. Right. So it's a different kind of conversation that I would be having with that person. So we're getting to the point where, I don't have Spice here to back me up where we go for hours and hours and hours. We're getting to the point where kind of closing out the show. And I wanted to talk about, just kind of a list of things that you need to think about before you engage in closure. And the reason that we started having this conversation so that we're all on the same page. So look, I'm watching too much Sopranos. I got to stop. I'm using my Italian hands. But the reason we started having this closure conversation is because, look, quarantine is and lockdown or whatever we're calling it is destroying people's mental health at the moment. Me personally, I know I am not doing well. I'm an extrovert. I'm an extrovert to the point where, I will sell all day. Selling is one of my favorite things to do. I will sell all day. I will lecture all day because that's my other favorite thing to do. I love to teach, and I will lecture to 300 people, and I'll do workshops, and I'll talk, and I'll educate, and I'll yada yada yada. And I will come home, and the way I recharge is I'm texting 10 guys and being like, who's playing video games tonight? What are you doing? I'll text my girl. I'll text my mom. I'll text my dad. I want to have conversations going on, and that's how I like to fall asleep. It recharges my soul, right? So I am not doing well, not seeing people. I tutor small children. I'm tutoring kids and teenagers and young adults, and that's like literally the only interaction I have. Is we're talking about video games and sports and bike riding, and it's great, but not always great. So we're in these situations, right? During quarantine, during lockdown, things are happening, and we are struggling to figure out who we should be engaging with. And we're looking through our phones, and we're messaging people, we're thinking about messaging people, or we're liking some photos. And you ever get to that point, you know the point that I'm talking about, right? You ever get to that point where you are like, I'm saying you are like 6 months deep on somebody's Instagram or Facebook, and you go, or don't you, right? You double tap it. A, because you want to. B, you know damn well what's going to happen. You know damn well. I mean, unless they're an influencer like me and my girlfriend or some other folks, I get a flurry of likes and follows typically throughout the day, and they come in state and they come in like groups. Um, Still, I'll notice though once in a while because a lot of my likes and follows come in like spurts. All of a sudden, it's like a Saturday afternoon, and all of a sudden, I go, what? And I like, you know what I mean? I'm like, who you're liking my? That's a picture from like 2018. I know darn well what you were doing, right? Trying to get their attention, right? And I'd say at least, even a couple weeks ago, I had somebody message me on Instagram. Hope you're doing well. It wasn't even in my accepted messages because I had unfollowed them already from months and months and months ago. And before you do that, right? Before you engage in a conversation, and it's okay. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do. Hey, look, maybe we can reconnect. Maybe this is what we need to do. We need to reconnect with people. But before you do that, I think you want to think of a couple things. Now, I always like to work in the rule of three. If anybody knows me, they know that I like to work in the rule of three because I give you 10 things to remember. How many things are you going to remember? Right? Two, one, maybe three. So what's the point? And are those the three most important things? Maybe not. There's seven other things that I could have given you. I always talk about the rule of three, right? Because if I give you three things to remember, easy to remember, and three key points are always going to be easier to follow, right? So before you engage in the closure kind of relationship, the one thing that I always do, the first thing that I always do, right, is assess yourself at this moment. Assess yourself at this moment and ask yourself why you're looking for closure. Why are you looking for closure right now? Are you bored? If you're bored, you don't need closure, you need a craft. Order some Mod Podge and get some magazines out and cover something fun, right? And that's what I like to do anyway. I mean, if you'll see, I have things all around my office that I've built out of boredom. You know, it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I don't want to do something stupid, so create something fun, right? So number one, assess yourself. Where are you at currently? Why are you looking for closure right now? Are you bored? Are you feeling vulnerable and unsafe? If you're feeling vulnerable and unsafe, who are you with that's making you feel that way? Who are you not with that's making you feel that way, right? Are you feeling like the closure is something that you truly need at this moment, right? So it's kind of assess, is it something that you need or is it something that would be great? Is it a fantasy, right? Fantasies are great. I fantasize, you know what's funny too, and CC and I'll probably laugh about this later. I fantasize at least once a week about winning the lottery. You know how many times I've played the lottery? I don't think I've ever played the lottery once in my life. I mean, I get scratch off tickets when people buy them for me. I can't even think of the last time I bought myself a scratch off ticket because I think it's a waste of money. I fantasize about winning the lottery at least once a week. Do I go out and buy 45 lotto tickets? Absolutely not. Right? The closure you're looking for, it's very likely it's a fantasy because no matter what happens, there's another person on the other end of that screen who has, or whatever you're doing, talking through, who has to have that conversation with you. And they have expectations too, because the relationship ended for them just as it ended for you. So it's important to understand that the closure you're looking for is probably not going to be the closure you get because you're going to have to volley and you're going to have to be emotionally understanding of the person on the other end of the phone, right? So be careful about the closure that you're looking for because it's probably not going to happen the way in which you want it to happen. The other person has feelings, the other person has a perception as well, and you need to be aware of what their needs are, right? So that's the first thing, right? Is assess yourself and understand what are you looking for with this whole closure thing, right? Now, the second thing that I would say, right? One, two, three, right? The second thing that I would say is think about um, not just assess yourself, but think about how the relationship ended, right? And what I like to do, this is why I save sometimes, from a relationship at least, I'll save emails or I'll scroll through text messages or something like that. Or I'll just think or I'll look at pictures, right? And I'll try to remember, 'cause I try not to save as many text messages because it kills your phone and it's dead karma, it's dead juju to carry that burden. But I'll look at pictures or I'll just think about where you were when that relationship ended, where you were feeling when that relationship ended And think about the bad and the good and all those things. If you're looking for closure in a way that like this person was a bad person, right? And you want to tell them they were a bad person, try to remember that on the other end of that there was some good there, right? Because obviously there had to be, unless you were in an abusive relationship, in which case I would say you don't need closure, you need space and you need safety, right? I'm not the expert on that, but it's something I'm saying. But look at the relationship as a whole and see, do I really need that closure, or can I find that closure by looking at the relationship through the lens that I now have? Because the reason you're looking for closure, right, is your perception has changed. If you had the closure already, if your perception was the same, you would have already gotten that closure. You would have had that conversation if it was possible, right? So using your perception now, look back at that relationship and go, can I close this myself? And I'll bet you 9 times out of 10 you can. And I'll bet you 9 times out of 10 you'll understand that it probably is, you know, the the best way to do it is to kind of close that out. So I've gone through number one. Number one is assess yourself. Number two is assess the relationship, right? Number three, if you are still seeking that closure, if you're still seeking that closure, you still want to have it, you need to assess the best way to go about it. You need to assess the best way to go about it because you need to understand that there is somebody on the other end of the dial tone who's going to want something from that conversation as well. And this is not when you're in a relationship, right? When you're in a 2-person or a 3-person or a 4-person or a 10-person relationship, whatever it is, you're not in a relationship with yourself, right? We, of course, can have relationships with ourselves, and that's great. But if you're in a relationship with somebody else, at one point, again, outliers aside, at one point there was love and there was care there, right? You cared about the feelings of this person. You cared about how this person felt and reacted and dealt and lived and loved and all these things, right? If you are going into this closure conversation that you're destined to have because you've gone through number one, you've gone through number two, now you're at number three where you're going to have the conversation. If you're going to have it, you must have it, right? It's important to take note of the fact that you are not the only person that is going to need closure or is going to need some aftercare, right? So you need to be prepared to introduce it in a way that you know is going to be received okay. You need to be prepared with the fact that they can say no, right? You also need to be prepared with the fact that if they say yes, it means that they have a need as well. And it means that you need to cater to their needs the same way you would have catered to their needs if you were in that loving relationship that you had to begin with, that started the whole thing, that you need the closure to begin with, now anyway, right? So, in closing, I want to reiterate that while we are all stuck indoors, this may not be the time to text your ex. But if you do, and you were looking for stuff, look, if you're looking to reopen it, I got nothing for you. Okay, there's been one person that I've been able to successfully do an on-off thing with, and I'm hoping that it never goes on and off again. Right? There's just that one person. Everyone else, I've looked back and I've gone, this has ended for a reason, and the reason is blah blah blah. And I think if you look into yourself, and it does require some self-awareness. I think you'll be able to see that the closure you're looking for is probably within. Probably within. Now, if you must. Now, if you're going to reopen it, I got nothing for you. Good luck. Use protection because a baby is going to make you closer than you've ever been before. But if you require that closure, I think that it's super important that you truly assess what your needs are and who you are and what the relationship was and is and what might be as you have that conversation, because it's not going to be the fantasy that you imagine it to be. 1 out of 1,000 are going to be those I really stuck it to them kind of conversations. And at the end of that 1 in 1,000, probably not going to be a conversation that you're proud of anyway. So those are my thoughts on closure in a relationship. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed my milkshake and my water and hanging out with y'all. Please feel free next time, get some comments in here, hang out with me. My name is Dr. Christopher Salute. This is The Barbershop. We are with WGSN-DB, Going Solo Radio. CC on as in the background doing our production work. You're here with The Barbershop. Closure in the relationship. I want to thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week I believe Think It Twice will be on next week, and then in 2 weeks I've got a special treat for you. Got a really good friend out of Brooklyn, New York. We're going to be talking about your mental and your physical health. This guy is an all-star. He is one of the most amazing people. He was one of my best friends growing up, and you guys are going to love him. His name's Keith Van Wickler. But that's it for me tonight. You guys have a great night. Please stay safe out there. Going Solo Network. Oh, Jessica, here you are. You're the best. We could talk about closure all day. It's too bad I didn't have you as a guest on the show. You guys have a great night, and thank you guys so much for joining us. And stay safe out there. Be bold.